Hello, everybody. My name is Urbina, and I am here today with Ryan Skinner of Forrester. This is one of our pre-conference interviews leading up to OmnichannelX 2019, coming up in this January. So, OmnichannelX is a new cross-disciplinary event and community for marketers, content specialists, commercial teams, and anyone else who wants to tackle today's content and communication challenges using multiple touchpoints. As such, we are very excited to have Ryan here from Forrester, who specializes in just that. So I am program director. My name is Urbina. I'll be conducting most of these interviews. And Ryan, if you want to introduce yourself to our community.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Naz. My name is Ryan Skinner. I'm a senior analyst on Forrester's research team that advises marketing leaders. As people can probably hear from my voice, I'm an American, but I am settled pretty much for good in Europe. I work out of London. So I advise marketers on both sides of the pond, really, and been an analyst about 5 years and have focused almost the entire time on content marketing, and content strategy, which has led to some of the most recent research explicitly on how do you start thinking about content from an omnichannel perspective.
Excellent, excellent. That's a similar story to myself, actually. North American, now in Europe, in content and content strategy. So, so you'll be speaking at the event. You're one of our featured speakers, and so I just wanted to get a little bit of a feel for what you'll be kind of bringing to your talk, where you'll be focusing, and what kind of issues you'll be tackling.
Sure. One of the privileges that I have by being a researcher is that I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of marketing leaders, a lot of digital leaders, agencies, technology vendors about what they're seeing, what the challenges are in the market, who's doing what, and oftentimes kind of the real, truth about a lot of organizations and how they're set up and the challenges that they have, and all the places where they have to copy and paste stuff, and how things actually work, which
the
is
dirty secrets.
Right. It's never quite as pretty as they'd like it to be. And they're always, when they have the opportunity to really tell about how it is, they don't hesitate to be, express frustration, because oftentimes they're being supported by IT teams who have other priorities, who aren't as deadly focused on the particular issues that marketing is facing, and sometimes, in many instances, not even really focused on how customers' lives are.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Right. All right. So, what are some of the common themes you're getting from these interviews?
So one thing that's really common, of course, and I think it's mentioned a lot, is the fact that the different parts of an organization work well together. Either it's the kind of different product teams, or the different channel teams, or the different regions, or the different kind of functional silos within the organizations. So they're just not communicating together. They don't share common technologies. They don't share any really common plans. They might be getting some dictation from above about this is the big product that we need to launch, or this is our big strategy for the year, and then they kind of go off on their own to imagine for themselves what they're going to do. I talked to a VP CMO at a major investment bank in Europe, and they were just like, we have one of our problems is we have all these teams in rooms all over the world, little meetings, 5 or 6 of them, and they're hatching plans, and they're making them on their spreadsheets, and off they go. They're going to brief agencies, stuff's going to get made, and we may never hear about it. It may get published, it may never get published. If it does get published, who knows through which channels, what customers we're touching, what's happening. It's all very, painful.
You raise an interesting point there. I was talking with Robert Rose after the ICC conference, or during, technically, one night, and we were talking about this idea of content at the edges. This is the way that Robert puts it. And there's 2 conflicting forces. There's the idea that you want people who are right as close to the customer as possible in the regions, who have their finger on the pulse, to defining content strategies, editorial plans, direction, and therefore some of the technical requirements that support that. But then you have this issue of visibility. You have a conflicting force which says we need to act as one brand, we need to know what we are collectively doing. We need to have all the kind of ducks in one row, walking in one direction. So how do we square that hole?
Yeah, it's what I typically talk about is just the centralization versus decentralization
Mm.
paradox. That there are benefits on both sides, right?
Hmm.
Centralization creates efficiencies, more brand control, more strategic focus. Localization or decentralization, you're closer to the customer. It's
Mm.
reasonable for the people who are marketing to the consumer in Thailand to say, we know the Thai consumer a lot better than you do in Atlanta or in Seattle or in London. Let us get on with it.
Mm.
So, there is reason for that. And I think this is that kind of general, high level centralization, decentralization debate has been around long, even before there was really digital, for example.
True.
I think a lot of the question then becomes about just being a little bit more open or finding ways to be open. One of the things that I talk about is just kind of there's a famous expression. How does it go? I'm going to get it wrong. Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Okay.
In that, if bad things are going on, just getting a little light in there suddenly makes a lot of problems go away. So we talk about just making open, shared, cloud-based environments where plans happen. And
At
suddenly,
least some visibility.
some visibility. People can at
Hmm.
least see what other teams are doing. And that allows, leaders to drill into things if they want to, start querying things. I think, for any of us who have worked in a large enterprise, you have had probably the experience of stumbling on like interesting shared drives with actually information that you
Yeah.
wish you would have had at some point, and just making that more often the case. There has to be some controls, but thinking that through, I just don't think in most businesses, the way that their environments have been set up, the way that they work and live and everything has been managed or thought through, it's like marketing hasn't done its own digital transformation.
Mm.
They've just gone to market as through digital channels, but they haven't actually within the marketing organization thought about how do we actually work. And some of the basics we find is just like, start using more digital tools, do things in shared open environments, use better structure so there's better search, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these kinds of things are a good place to start. Then there's, governance. So if you have that perspective, right, of where value is going to be added, where strategy should come from, where it should be defined. I mean, there's just a process, and a lot of organizations haven't done this, of just kind of trying to map these things out. I was on a call with a major US product brand who markets to kind of professional consumers, and to just say, like, where does, for example, the content strategy, where should it originate as the kind of primary motivation? In many of these organizations, that's product teams who want to push out news about a new product or a product update or some new feature or whatever. And then it goes down through channels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you could start in a lot of organizations just by making a very good descriptive, making it like saying, this is how it actually looks like, and just like describing it.
Mm-hmm.
Then talking about, prescription, what should it actually look like? And that might look very different. But for many organizations, just getting transparent about the description of this is how actually content gets conceived and how it cooks down through kind of the different levels, if you will.
Mm-hmm. I think that in the content strategy community, because it was new, there was a sort of question of, do we even need more than one content strategist?
Mm-hmm.
Which I always find a little bit silly, because that's like saying we only need one UX designer or one IA or one product manager.
Yeah.
So what we're kind of talking about in terms of governance, it's to cut across the hierarchies. We actually need a hierarchy of content strategists. So we have a content strategy at the highest level, but then we have something that percolates down that can be executable regionally or by division, or however the organization is structured, so that we have a unifying vision, but then can we kind of have local plans and tactics and processes for pulling it off?
Yeah. I mean, there's probably as many approaches and good approaches to governance as there are businesses. There's certainly a few principles. I think there is value in some centralization function across an entire enterprise when it comes to content. Into, a lot of businesses will have brand guidelines, right? But they don't brand guidelines that extend into a lot of issues around content, all the way into like tones of voice and all this kind of good stuff.
It's a lot of kind of logos and colors and spacing.
Right. Logo lockouts, palettes, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
But not the explicit pieces of like, this is our corporate terminology. This is what we refer to. Talking to a major US automaker, what is the back of a pickup truck called? What do you call it?
I would call it the bed.
Right? And I would probably, some people call it the box.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
But for some people who call it the bed, the box is like the little toolbox accessory you can get in the bed. There's like a little like,
oh right, yeah.
Like a toolbox. That's the box.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, well, simple thing, but if everyone across the organization, they're kind of when you're kind of configuring your truck, it says a bed, then you go into the dealer and they're like, what? No, a box? Oh, this is a box. And they're like, no, the box.
Yeah.
You get in all these kind of conversations.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be the experts.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And you're kind of getting egg on your face. So that piece, it can be really good to have at an enterprise level. Really just the whole, like, this is how the organization enterprise organizes for content. So this is kind of how we think about the content tech and how we think about metadata. Maybe that at lower levels, there's content programs that are run by people who actually establish the metadata structures that they have. Maybe they'll have their own kind of metadata structure, but at least at the high level, they say this is how it should look or how detailed it should be or something along those lines.
Right.
IBM.
So governance level guidelines.
Yeah, exactly.
For those local plans.
Yeah, IBM does that.
Yeah, well, we actually have got, of course, we've got Michael Priestley from IBM who does kind of specifically that, working to enable IBM to scale. And we just actually, our previous interview was with Marie Girard from Paris, who was feeding into that global strategy.
Excellent.
So they're always kind of a reference organization for us because their content problems are so big that they kind of have to tackle them before everybody else does. So they're always good. You mentioned kind of tech silos and tech strategy, and I want to be kind of explicit on that because I still get people today looking for the one system, the one content management system that will do digital asset management, content management, approvals and audit trails, web publishing for the entire enterprise, yet be light and agile, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm of the opinion that that whole image was a very .com era idea that's kind of collapsed now, and that the idea of the one system to rule them all is outdated. What are your feelings, and have you seen anybody who has found, you don't have to name names, but has found one system, or is it a matter of learning to federate and standardize across various?
Well, it's the same centralization, decentralization story, really, except with content assets, it's about kind of technology stuff, right? If you are, for example, pushing out video content to broadcast, some businesses do that on a global level, then you'll really be happy if you have something like AdStream, which automates the creation. Because every WKPR in South Korea takes a very specific frame rate, bit rate, all this kind of current funky video standards for their broadcast television. Yeah. And it takes some time to reprogram that video into that format. So it's just a certain measure, a certain graininess, whatever. And they automate that for every country in the world, right? You put in one piece of video and it will churn out okay, now we got all the versions for every country in the world. So you can broadcast it in each of these countries and into many of the different broadcasters in those countries. If you are dealing with global video distribution, then that's going to be a huge advantage. And you're not going to get that from an Open Text or a North Plains or an Atom. They're yeah, we do a lot of stuff, but I mean that level of detail, no. So
there's still room for specialism.
Exactly. Where at the same time, you can't argue that getting the entire organization, or as much as you can, to have a shared library for version control purposes, for all this, is hugely valuable. So there's that teasing, and it's going to happen, I think, within every organization. And there's no nirvana, there's no perfect place. There's
Hmm.
just I think hopefully marketing teams getting up to bat a little bit more here, and at least being aware of some of the issues, and maybe getting a little bit more a stronger voice with the IT department, or having their IT department think a little bit differently, or understand how important this is actually for how customers experience their business or their brand.
Right, right, right. That's an interesting question in terms of the IT marketing relationship. I've been seeing in our consulting support and call centers really kind of meshing as a touch point where marketers really want to know what's going on, what questions are being asked, and then how are offers, upsells, cross grades, etc., being handled and presented, because it's a majorly brand impactful, to put it clumsily. So if you call up and speak to a human being, how that human being presents the content that they're supposed to be relaying really impacts brand. Then I've also seen in major manufacturers, your IBMs, your kind of high tech companies, they are looking to integrate documentation, tech comm, help, and training with marketing to be more
Mm-hmm.
effective. Have you seen trends in that area? Which groups are playing nice together out in the field? And does that differ by vertical industry?
So different like groups that serve customers across like what we would call a customer lifecycle or a customer journey, so
Start
to
to team
speak.
up.
I guess in B2B land, there's always been the marketing sales discussion.
Hmm.
That's been, a big discussion again also for decades, where, the issue for them has always and often been around what does an actual lead look like? What is a quality lead? And where marketing is always like, we give you all these names, and sales like they're always junk.
Mm.
Really understanding what a good lead looks like and having good conversations around that, and how do we communicate with those leads? What are they actually interested? How should we be communicating them? I mean, that's been a really long-term thing. I think it's some organizations, especially perhaps some of the bigger kind of people who are getting advanced in e-commerce, they're having better conversations between the marketers and the digital teams. So those who are
Hmm.
the e-commerce creation systems and creation, and trying to balance the brand communications, the storytelling, the educational content, those kinds of things with the sales types of experiences. No, it wasn't too long ago, literally just a matter of a few years, in which all the product teams and digital commerce teams and et cetera were like, I don't want any content really on that product page, like aside from just the product images themselves, only maybe, and description of the product, and let's just make that button big, and that kind of approach.
Done.
That is has changed,
Mm.
and there's a lot more understanding. Actually, a lot of UGC of real people using the product is hugely valuable. There is
User generated content.
user-generated content, bringing products into some of the more educational experiences so that people can get straight from educational experiences to the product, and having those two talk better together. And that's where the classic, commerce and content types of conversations happen, like
Right.
CMS versus e-commerce suite.
So even just within the two arm, actually, I didn't even think about that when I was asking the question, but I have seen the same thing all the time, which is the line, which can be either a hard line or quite a fuzzy one, between product information marketing,
Mm-hmm.
product descriptive marketing, and content marketing, editorial marketing, experiential marketing, uh, event marketing, and so
Mm-hmm.
on. So even within marketing, we have multiple silos that we can
Yep.
be integrating before we even talk to other groups. So it's a little saddening that we are when I was looking for any extra team connections, but yeah, just within marketing we have that issue. Have you seen anybody pull it off beyond that, really, uh, outside of the whole sales marketing group?
Outside of sales marketing, so as you say,
Yeah,
customer service. I mean,
doc,
there's
training,
yeah.
events. Well, events, I
Um,
guess, marketing still.
There was a good case study that we've done. One of the businesses that has done customer experience quite well, according to Forrester's own analysis,
Hmm.
is a bank in Germany, ING DIBA, part of
Yep,
the Dutch ING chain.
yep. We
And
interviewed them recently.
oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
they've done a lot of interesting work to try to make the customer experience better. That is, it takes a customer experience perspective, but has a lot of then content impacts. So
Hmm.
they tried to simplify their product structure. They tried to simplify how they talked about their products. They tried to make it. They tried to make their call scripts more conversational.
Hmm.
They tried to hire people who are more service oriented and maybe less traditionally banky type of people. And all this, is in line with one of our findings in our customer experience research, is that kind of clear and understandable communications are one of the biggest and most unambiguous drivers of good customer experience.
Hmm.
Or as I like to say,
Keep it simple.
plain words make us happy. Like, don't give me the weird legalese description of the terms of my bank account. Like, tell me what it
Mm.
really means. And it's the benefits of that are huge. And it's not how organizations have been trained to speak, where you walk, the airline's going to say there's a delay, and it's like, instead of just saying, sorry, folks, there's a bit of a delay, it's like, we have appeared to encounter a technical malfunction that will result in a 10-minute possible delay. It's like, what?
Just
So,
say it.
right, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I have a go-to slide from Ralph Hamers, who is the CEO of ING, and he says that our customers said that they need banking, not banks. You can't differentiate through your products. You need to differentiate through your experience, which I think
Mhm.
is a really important message, especially for Western world countries who are not going to be able to compete on price or cost anymore. They have to differentiate on something else, both within local markets and on a global stage.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be somebody who has a lower costs and can take smaller margins and
Hmm.
eat your lunch. And that's, as I said, I was talking that product brand. That was one of the challenges that they were seeing, is that they are a Western product manufacturer that actually has a lot of their stuff made in China, and they're having more and more products being marketed directly by those Chinese businesses
Hmm.
who are doing so in a more and more sophisticated way. And they can take a smaller margin. It's the same product, and they're
Yeah,
marketing it well. And
or 95% the same product, and
yeah,
customers are willing to spend. If you can save 30% and get 95% of the product, it's just a no-brainer. So what have you got left? And that's only going to get worse because we keep talking about China, but there's a lot of the emerging markets like South America, Africa. They have an opportunity there to also emerge as well. And then we have three-quarters of the planet who is totally outpricing the one quarter that there is currently dominating global commerce.
hmm
So in terms of where has it worked? Can you give us some good little tips of you've talked to a bunch of organizations, you've seen some dirty secrets. What can we do right now? What do you think? What do you think have you been seeing that is actually effective at tackling some of these omni-channel challenges?
Yeah, I talked to a retailer in Switzerland, Vitra,
Mm-hmm.
and they had their kind of CEO. So the very top of the organization was like, we be more kind of think more holistically about how we talk about all our products, where they appear. We need to be more systematic about how we relate to this.
Mm.
So they really, and this is probably because they had, as a retailer, who has a bit of control in a way over both their stores as well as their online sales, but don't go through a lot of channels, could be a little bit more kind of strict.
Mm-hmm.
Thus, they centralized in a specific content and asset management technology, and spent a lot of time on the taxonomy and said, we're going to create this centralized hub for talking about our products and our stories and our customers.
Mm.
And we're going to have kind of a common place for the customer information, the product information, and all this kind of good
All
stuff.
right. How big is that organization? Because I find that just what you've just said is already seems like a bridge too far, and a lot of our clients where you're just talking about these 50, 100, 120,000 person organizations.
Yeah, yeah. Vitra, how big are they? I mean, they're a major retailer in, like, I think, like Switzerland. I think they're in Germany. Um, I honestly don't know how extensive they are. I mean, they're pretty considerable retailer, though. I mean, not Walmart size or IKEA
Hmm.
size, perhaps, but pretty considerable.
All right. Okay.
It is, as you say. I think it's, the smaller the environment, the easier it is to organize. The larger the environment, the harder it is.
Hmm.
One group that's I don't know if you could say that they've realized huge success, but they're at least trying to and are on the path to has been Hilton. I've
Mm.
talked with them and read their own descriptions of their efforts to create a more omni-channel approach to content. Where, I mean, for them, and the hotels, each hotel is essentially its own property.
Hmm.
So there's kind of a whole kind of governance piece and communications piece that has to be worked out. And they're making big progress to say, like, if we want a particular story or idea to appear across all those Hilton websites, that's something that would be valuable to us, and we can't do today, but we should be able to do.
Mm.
We should be able to update things in one place and have it roll out on all the different places. And they're in the midst, they're kind of, I think, of getting through that process of how detailed to go on that and getting all the things connected that should be connected, but are at least making progress against it.
So in both cases, it's a matter of having a central vision, and then in the Vitra's case, Vitra, you said?
Vitra, yes.
Vitra's case, actually getting that governance backbone in place. I like that you mentioned taxonomy. Taxonomy is still a little bit of a dirty word. It scares a lot of people. But I think that in another few years, it's going to be as mundane as saying metadata.
Right.
Organizations right now go, do we even need one of those? We have a client right now, major bank, is actually asking the question, do we really need taxonomy management? Whereas it's one of those central things that what you call things and how you categorize things is so fundamental to making all this work across channels. Are you seeing good uptake? Are you seeing the same thing, that taxonomy and how we speak and how we label is getting managed better?
Maybe a little bit slowly.
Slowly, bit by
not
bit.
not like very rapidly. It's just one of those things where it doesn't. It looks like a very painful process. It doesn't. The benefits don't look immediate. It's not like you're going to go to your board and it's like, we did this big taxonomy project, and it'll be like, whoa, all right, thumbs up. They're going to be like,
Right,
what
right, right.
did you just do, huh?
Right. Yes.
Sounds like you said a dirty word.
It's a long game.
Yeah. So that's hard to do. The things, the benefits, and I think this is some of the things that I'd mentioned. And when I talk about some of this content intelligence pieces and content structure pieces, is with the long game, and not even long. You start looking at AI and some of the kind of AI decisioning that will go on in terms of delivery. But you need to have some structure to how things are set up to help inform that. It should
Yeah.
be readable structures so that they can actually do something with it. So there's a big story there, and we're talking about what that preparation would mean, and how taxonomy can play into that.
Right.
But
It's good you
we're
It's
just
good you
seeing.
mentioned the AI bit there, because in relation to taxonomy, and that's actually because on our way out of the interview here. I think AI is a fantastic place to wrap up, because that's like the hot topic for the future.
Mhm.
We had a major bank who was doing AI chatbots specifically, and they found that taxonomy was the main thing that drove better answers. So
Mhm.
fine tuning the taxonomy made the AI function better. And what I'm scared of, and what I wanted to get your take on, was I'm concerned about people, especially because it's called artificial intelligence, going, great, now I can offload all my problems onto this box that's going to think for me. And you're saying that the importance of machine readable, the importance of taxonomy. Can you just elaborate on why the AI just can't fix it all for us?
So AI builds a lot of it builds out of data science, and data science is essentially how systems use information to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes working off of, for example, decision trees to look at a number of different models and try to determine which one is best over time.
Mm.
And the question then becomes how those decision trees get built or established. And without kind of handholds, if you will, kind of, it's like imagine a wall, a sheer wall, trying to climb that wall without some kind of things to grip onto or something for the AI or the system to be able to manipulate in terms of
Mm-hmm.
understanding the content. The AI needs some kind of levers to turn. It needs some tooling in order to do its decisioning kind of process. And the labels, the taxonomy, the information about what the information is about provides it with some of that tools in order to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And in every organization, and this is going to be a big piece, I think that we'll see is that and this is what we're also seeing, is that they're going to want to take the AI and tune it to their particular brand, their business,
Mm-hmm.
how their business works, because taking an out-of-the-box type of AI system to, for example, a new industry, it's not gonna be optimal. It's not gonna even make necessarily terribly good decisions because it doesn't understand, for example, what is the ideal target? What are you optimizing towards? What are you trying to drive towards? The system, the decisioning system, needs to know where it's going. What is optimizing for? These kinds of things. There's a lot of aspects. So the taxonomy is an important piece. Programming in good targets, feeding good and valuable information. So the data that goes into the decision-making process that helps the AI learn will be another important piece that we'll see over time. So how are you training the thing? What information goes into it? And this is one of the things we've also done some research into, is how well is this managed from an ethical perspective? Because there's a significant risk that you start training AIs on real environments, they will simply mirror back the discrimination that is inherent in the environment. And we've already seen a few quite nasty examples of that.
Microsoft had some trouble, and I think that was the most famous one that I can remember. But we've had some snafus with just letting an AI become a bad person.
Yeah, there was one with Google.
As well? Okay.
Yeah, you can Google it. Just Google AI primate. I think you'll find this story.
Yeah, primate. Okay.
That's a pretty recent. Was more recent than the Tay story, but yeah, there's a whole litany of kind of examples of businesses rolling out AI in ways that were harmful, misperceived, or just not good for the business or society at large.
Right. Okay, great. I think, well, what I'm getting is that, that an AI is an intelligence. So if you hired a super intelligent person, you still would have to explain to them your domain, your brand, your goals, what you know, etc. You can't expect them to just kind of know that. So
It's limited intelligence.
absolutely.
At some point, we'll have kind of what they call AGI, generalized intelligence, meaning it would kind of have the same understandings. Maybe to a certain degree, you and I could figure things out in a way and probably do so very quickly, but that's still many, 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 many years down the road. But so right now, it's all limited. Needs training and needs to understand, needs to be developed against a particular goal and that kind of stuff. So yeah, those are the limitations we have.
Intense care and feeding.
Intense care and feeding. That's right.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Ryan. I've got a great time chatting with you. I'm sure that our viewers find it valuable. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person in Amsterdam for the conference, and I'm sure we'll get some more stuff out of you in between now and then, because you've got so many great things to say. So thanks again.
I'm looking forward to the event. I'm looking forward to seeing you there and seeing everyone else and having some great presentations and great conversations.
Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining. We're going to wrap up here. This is not going to be our last interview before the conference, so keep coming back for more. Tell your friends. The call for speakers is open now, so you might be able to rub elbows with Ryan himself at the conference if you want to submit and tell your story. And registration, well, I don't know when you're watching this, but registration will be opening June 4th. We just rescheduled the registration, so sorry about that. So keep your eye out, and I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.